G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and yesterday I fired off a message to Forge World. As you can see, I've written down the message on YouTube, but I originally messaged them over Facebook because it's probably the easiest social media platform to engage with them over. Now, people ask the question or say things like, oh, this is entitlement, this is this, this is that. Yeah, okay. Let's just take a step back from here. So, the reason I would message them over a open forum as opposed to an email or something like that is because I want a response. You're never going to get a decent response if you don't hold them accountable in front of other people. It's really that simple. And although you might say it's not the social media people's responsibility to have to deal with that, well, it kind of is, but also, how else are you going to get a response? It's still the same sort of people that are answering you at the other end of those emails, for better or for worse for them. So, hopefully, they had the fortitude to pick up the message, take it upstairs and give it to the right people, but I highly doubt it. As I state in my message here, remember, there are other people at the end of the line when you do send these messages, so it's not fire and brimstone. You be polite, you be courteous, you treat them like you should treat human beings. Don't treat them like crap because it's not their responsibility for what the company does. So, going forward from there, the question I asked was, good evening, Forge World. I want to share some community sentiment with you. For Warhammer, the old world, we have a form of roadmap. We know what bases it has, what scale it is, this is a good thing. What do we have for the Horus Heresy currently? We have had mass discontinuation of units over the last 4 years, and what has been released since Book 9 is all related to the Siege of Terra. This is a concern, as with the Solar Auxilia down on products from Last Chance to Buy, the Demons of the Ruinstorm lacking their actual non-characters, Greater Demon Beasts, Greater Demon Behemoths, Ruinstorm Brutes with Wings, the list goes on. And with the following legions having no special characters or commander miniatures, that's the Iron Warriors, the Raven Guard, the Salamanders. And with the following legions having just one character or named character, and that is the Iron Hands, World Eaters, and Death Guard. What are your plans going forward? Legions like the Imperial Fists have 3 characters, a standard bearer, 2 special characters, both elite legion units, and I mean no disrespect to the staff who have created some lovely miniatures, but the key fundamentals are being neglected. A game is not built upon 3 or 4 legions having all of the toys because you want to present your book series front and center. It's disastrous for the long-term health of the system. We, the fans and people who buy your most expensive range of products, would like to know, what is your plan? Nothing more complicated than that. I'm not seeking new models this week. I'm not asking for a new rulebook or an FAQ. We're at the point where we're so starved of information, we simply need an answer beyond, we will ask someone, or the minute we hear some news, we will let you know. The Horus Heresy is in September this year, 10 years old. We still lack basic essentials, so please, what is the plan? And their response was underwhelming. Hey James, this is some good feedback. Please forward it to the Forge World at gwplc.com so our team can see it. We don't have plans for a roadmap at the moment, but that sounds like a cool idea for the future. There are many awesome things on the way for Forge World, and we'll bring you all the news here on this page. So, how does one take that message? If you take it at face value, we don't have plans for a roadmap. That reads absolutely abysmally. That is beyond horrible, because it's saying we don't have a clue what we're doing with it. I don't think that's the truth, and I want to shed some light on this today. So, with that in mind, what do I think is coming based on the facilities, the resources, the rumours, their capabilities as a company? Some of this I talked about in Archcast. It has to do with the financial report, and I've sort of been piecing all these little bits of the puzzle together to come up with a solution. And hopefully, I can provide you guys a roadmap. The only thing I'm not certain on is the timeline. So, the first thing I want to point out is the Horus Heresy releases versus the quantity of sculpts. That's what this graph represents. It's blue and orange. I tried to pick 2 colours that should be dissimilar enough. The colourblind, I'm sorry if you can't read it, but I tried. The front set of columns is the amount of releases for that year. And the back column is the amount of miniatures that actually totaled, because remembering, not every release is one miniature. Many releases are multiple miniatures, squads of 5. And as you can see, we had a couple of huge years back in 2013, 2014, and then slowly it started to dribble off, with 2019 being probably the best year since 2015. So what happened here? Because on the surface of it, 2021 had more releases than 2020 did. Well, what happened here is a bit of history lesson first. So the Horus Heresy released in 2012, and with that release being late in the year, a fourth quarter release, second quarter financial year release that is, we got the Horus Heresy game. And because of that, we had certain units released. Now, Power Armor had already come out, but this gave us, we got new Terminator armor in the form of Cataphracti. We got a couple of characters like Loken and Abaddon. We got Angron the Primarch. We got Red Butchers. So all those sort of units started to filter in. And then throughout 2012 and through 2013, more of these miniatures dropped. And then Book 2 strikes late in 2013. So bam, another big opportunity, because here you get Ferrus Manus, you get Fulgrim, you get Gorgon Terminators, you get Fire Drake Terminators, you get Pyroclasts, you get Medusan Immortals, etc., etc., etc. You get tons of units for these books, as well as a few little smatterings for Mechanicum. Then going into 2014, early in the year, I think it was March, you get the Raven Guard drop, and the Iron Warriors, all Book 3s, Alpha Legion, Imperial Fists, so massive releases there. And then late in the year, you get a second book, same year, second book. All of a sudden, you're getting Solar Auxilia, you're getting all those Imperial Knights and all those special releases all coming that year. Okay, huge deal right there. Then, flowing into 2015, well, 2015 is interesting because 2015 gave us the Ultramarines and Book 5, Tempest. It was originally supposed to be the Thousand Sons, Space Wolves, Custodes, and Sisters, but of course, that was such a nightmare trying to do all of those factions at once, they pushed it right back. And due to this, we ended up with a year which didn't have a huge amount of models compared to the previous years, but that was because it only had to look after a single legion. Because although we got Retribution, Book 6 as well, it's 6 months later, that book was basically a campaign book, and it didn't have any additional kits coming out with it. It was a book about rules mostly, and so was Book 5. Now, you got the Ultramarines, you got their special units, you got their Primarch, but you didn't get their Dreadnought, and that was a first. All the other Contemptors came out with the other books, so it was a bit strange there. You didn't get any special characters for them. Also a little bit strange, and of course the book was mostly about the Imperialis Militia, when it came to rules, that is, and you didn't really get that much there. But Book 6, an interesting one. Black Shields, well, all list, no miniatures. Knights Errant, well, you got 2 characters in Rubio and Garrow, and the rest of the book was mostly about Rights of War and playing campaigns, and special characters, which they didn't release any kits for either. So, a bit of a strange one, and yet the year of 2015 still filled out pretty well. Then you hit 2016, and 2016 seems really light on releases at first, but then you got to remember, 2016 gave us the Betrayal at Kelth and the Burning of Prospero boxed sets. All of a sudden, you have ridiculous amounts between 2016 and 2017 of plastic miniatures. So, although Betrayal at Kelth may be one release, Betrayal at Kelth gave you Cataphracti Terminators in plastic. It gave you Mark IV Power Armor in plastic. It gave you 2 characters, a Terminator and a Centurion. It gave you a plastic Contemptor Dreadnought, for better or definitely for worse. But it gave them to you. So it was a lot bigger than the one release really implies. Then, of course, 2017, you get the Thousand Sons, the Legio Custodes, the Space Wolves, Sisters of Silence, and the Burning of Prospero. And that process of releasing miniatures continues into 2018, when you end up with the Book 8 and getting the Blood Angels and the White Scars, who both saw a healthy amount of releases. But by this point, we're not doing 4 Legions at once, and we're not doing 2 releases a year like we were in 2013, 2014, 2015. We're now at the point where we're doing single books, and there are far, far less Legions to be covered, and the amount of miniatures being produced drops accordingly. And then 2020. Well, you get Dark Angels in 2019, 2020. And 2019 is mostly made up of Night Lords releases. So getting Contakar Terminators, getting Leviathan Dreadnought, getting additional consoles. And there was quite a few Legions that got consoles in 2019. That helped bulk them out. 2020 basically was the Dark Angels year. And I think Contakar came in under 2020, so I do apologise for that. You can go back on Warhammer Community and find the exact date these things dropped, by the way. I used my Forge World catalogues to go back and get the rough dates when everything dropped. So, yeah, it gives you a pretty good idea. And then, of course, 2021. 2021, we got exactly 11 units. And those units, unlike any other year, were all character models. So not a 5-man squad. No, every single release in 2021 was a single model, and it was the first year we didn't get a Primarch. I believe it was Lionel Johnson dropped on the 4th of August in 2020, and Jagadai Khan dropped on the 7th of January in 2022, off the top of my head. But again, feel free to go back and prove me wrong. I will own up to it if I am wrong on those accounts. So that's kind of a big deal, because we went from having massive slate of releases to a drip feed well, you see the graph for yourself. It's really disappointing. And of course, this is what has led to that sort of feeling of stagnation, because less and less stuff is coming out, true, but also the stuff that is coming out is more and more underwhelming because single miniatures, and I think that's what is most depressing. If they were squads of 5 miniatures, we might be having a slightly different discussion. I don't know, that's the gut instinct I have. I think if we'd seen more units drop, like, I don't know, maybe Iron Warriors, they have the Iron Havocs, for example, heavy support Marines. If they drop this year, okay. And maybe if some characters for those other legions had dropped, yeah, you probably wouldn't see such a scathing campaign on my behalf. But it is what it is. So in 2021, we're looking pretty bad. And it's about to look worse, because do remember, in a lot of those previous years, there were Black Books released. 1 in 2012, 2 in 2013, 1 in 2013, 2 in 2014, 2 in 2015, and then 1 in 2017, 1 in 2019, it was right at the start of 2019, and 1 in 2020. And of course, none in 2021. But I haven't included in here shoulder pads, helmets, weapons, any of that sort of stuff. I haven't included decals. And if I did, you guys know as well as I do that those first 4 columns would look a lot taller. And now the depressing part is what would happen if I took away all the stuff that went last chance to buy, which was mostly those shoulder pads and torsos and decal sheets. And yeah, it starts to look like a pretty disappointing graph at that point. So let's move away from there and into the now. So what do we know now? Well, first things first, Games Workshop's financial report has given me some pretty big insights into the company. Their material costs almost didn't rise throughout 2020 and 2021, despite COVID and inflation. That was shocking to me coming from the plastics industry, that their raw material costs went up so little compared to what my raw materials costs went up. I can't believe how well they've gotten away with it. Someone knows someone in the supply chain there, and he's getting a great deal. And good on them. That's what businesses should do. I also found it interesting in their financial report that they turned around and said that due to rising costs, suppliers have passed the costs on to Games Workshop. No shit. Suppliers tend to do that of any goods and services. If their prices rise, they pass that on to the customer. Games Workshop should know they love passing price rises for no reason along to the customer. Oh, see what I did there. Okay, but let's be serious. They have over 400 staff working in their factory. This is in the production ends. This isn't the people up the top end making silly statements on financial reports and the account-nomancy department, as they like to call it, or the Gretchens and Goblins that do website programming. No, this is over 400 staff employed to run the injection molding machines and provide maintenance. And they have 42 injection molding machines at last count. If I was reading the report correctly, I may have flubbed that number, but I'm not referring to it directly now. The report, that is. It's not on my desk in front of me, but old memory here says it's in the 40s. And that includes 7 new machines in the last financial year, which is interesting to note. So that is a lot of injection molding machines for a factory making these sort of products outside of somewhere like China. And again, from running a plastics factory, that only requires around about 60 staff to run those machines over multiple shifts. Let's say 70 to be on the safe side, and then probably another 30 staff just to install and service dies. Let's say 15 per shift. That leaves 300 staff to do your packaging, to cast your resins, to do R&D work. That is a lot of staff, over 300 people. So what are they doing? Well, it could just be the company is terribly managed and they don't know what to do with those staff, so they're giving them really basic tasks like putting boxes together and putting them in wrapping machines, and they're doing it manually instead of automating the process, which, hey, it's good for people. They're at least getting paid and getting work and a job and all that. And human beings are able to get a living instead of just some computer. I can approve of all of that. But it does make it pretty questionable about where their business sense is at. Now, with that many staff available to you, and that much of an increase in production capacity at a time when 3D printing is hugely on the rise, that says they're trying to really ride out the injection molding craze right until the end. And I can't tell you when that end is going to be because I don't foresee it. For the miniatures, it'll come quickly. For the rest of society, I think 3D printing has a long way to go before it will replace many of our other everyday items. But for Games Workshop, there is now a time limit on it. There is a finite cap as to how long they can run their company. So they want to produce a lot of plastic. And I've got the feeling that those plastic kits that were leaked are real. The question is timeline and delivery. So what would I see coming first? I don't see the infantry coming first. I see vehicles coming first. Rhino, Dreadnought, Spartan. They'd be my guesses as to what our first few vehicles are going to be that get previewed. And the reason why is they're probably not going to be part of a box set. The box set would probably contain tactical marines and a couple of plastic characters, if I was a betting man. So that's the roadmap. And it took a while for me to navigate there. Like the road to Thramas, it is long, convoluted, and you never quite reach the end. But Forge World is probably working on delivering these plastics, and they can't quite nail the marketing on it. They're probably afraid that if they say that they're going to release these plastics now, the customers will save their money. They will go, well, you know what? I'm going to hold off on buying something else from Games Workshop just so I can save up to buy these Heresy miniatures. And, Games Workshop could be right about that, but I don't think at this stage in the game there is too much cross-pollination between 40k and 30k. It's definitely there, it's definitely real, but I think the majority of 30k players are only interested in the 30k universe. They don't care about what 40k or Age of Sigmar have become. They might play Necromunda, they might play Titanicus, okay, but that's a different kettle of fish. So these players aren't going to be spending on 40k anyway, and the longer the radio silence is maintained, the more likely that players who might be interested in going to play in those, in the Horus Heresies of system, the longer it's maintained, they're probably just going to walk away because they're sick of the waiting game. And I see it all through the comments, and there's a lot of comments on Forge World's post, on this post I put on Forge World, that is, and in response to their very, very go and procreate with oneself response. And yeah, it's incredibly disappointing to see. And what was most disappointing to see was the response of a couple of people in there that were saying things like boring to the question I raised. Oh, boring. Okay. One person in particular really irritated me because that person has a financial stake in Games Workshop performing well, because they are one of those people who has an agreement with Games Workshop to get miniatures for free from Games Workshop and paint them up and promo those miniatures for them. In my mind, if you're that kind of person, you should be doing some form of disclaimer before you go onto a community post like mine and say, hey, I think this post doesn't represent the community, because you have a financial stake in looking good for the company. And here's the thing. If you say nothing, it's not going to affect you. Because if I can get Forge World to improve, Games Workshop as a whole to improve their communication with us, that's better for you in the long run, because it means more content for you to paint and make money off, because that's how you make your money, right? So don't be a douche nozzle. Come onto these posts and go boring or entitlement or whining, because no, I'm trying to get some constructive feedback across to a notoriously quiet company when it comes to their actual communication with the fan base. I mean, in their financial report, they say they communicate with the fan base. Well, here was their chance to, and well, look on screen. This is how they performed. What do you think of that? Do you really think that that is great? Because when you see the comments under a post like that, and you see a person who has a financial stake and they say, boring, instead of, hey, this post isn't for me, but by the way, I signed a non-disclosure agreement to not badmouth Games Workshop, and they give me free miniatures. Don't you think that kind of colours the perception of the comment? I think that's important information. I guess you could say I profit too off Forge World in a way, but I mean, apples and oranges. They're not giving me free stuff, and I don't think I make anywhere near enough for this channel each month. You can see the subscriber count of the YouTube channel, can tell roughly what I should be making. It ain't much. It's a couple $100. And I think we earn practically as much from Patreon each month. So it's not exactly winning in that regard. Yeah, it's just really sad to see the community being like that, because if we can improve them, great. It's improved for you too. But if you go and support their terrible behaviour and lack of communication, you're just getting them to double down and reinforce it, and you're improving nothing for anyone. So why do it? Just shut the fuck up and sit down in your little corner. And I mean, if this pisses you off or troubles you, I'm happy to take it up with you when we meet in person sometime. I don't mind that. We can debate it out. Hell, we can do a live debate over the air. For all I care, if you want to defend the practice of defending the company when clearly they haven't got their heads screwed on right. So, to reiterate, after looking at everything available to me and the downturn in releases and looking at what's happening going forward, we have a company who's afraid to give out information because they think, this is my guess, they're afraid to give out information because they think it'll take sales away from their other game systems at a time when they need to encourage as many sales as they can, because they've now built up all this hype on sales and risen their share price over the pandemic. Pandemic's over, people are buying less Warhammer, seeming to keep the sales up. So they're holding off on the release of the system in order to make sure that they can get as much money as possible from the other game systems like 40k and Age of Sigmar, and then, and of course from the existing resins, because they don't want people to stop buying the current resins and plastics. If you want to buy that Spartan today, you go and buy that Spartan today. Don't wait for us to release a plastic Spartan. That's what they're afraid of. And so they're holding off on their plastic releases until late in the year. How late in the year? Don't know. That's the question mark. That's really what the roadmap is. When are you going to release this thing? Not if, when. Because I think it will happen at this point. There's simply too much hype built up around it. And I think with the new injection molding machines, this is part of the reason they've done it. Because they want to try and use the Horus Heresy. And what you've got to remember is the Horus Heresy isn't just miniatures for Horus Heresy. The characters might be to some extent, but they also want to market this at 40k. If they bring out a plastic Spartan or a plastic Contemptor or a plastic Leviathan for Horus Heresy, they can target all those that people who love Primaris Marines, even if they are drooling off in the corner there. So good for them. But that's it. That's what I think the roadmap is. I don't foresee more black books, because the more Games Workshop dips their fingers in, the less they are about narrative and looking after the customer and trying to give them the experience the customer expects from an Imperial armor, and the more Forge World is into releasing a consumer-based product, which is, here is Codex, you buy Codex, now Codex is superseded by Superior Codex, now you buy this. That's their business model. And if you doubt that, go and have a look at when the last Imperial Armor book was released from Forge World and get back to me. Anyway, I'm back with the Outer Circle. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, for better or worse. And thoughts and feedback below. See you on the next one.